Tiferes Bachurim alumni in Morristown, New Jersey, many years ago. I had the chance to be a colleague with the Rabbi David Vichnin. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
From Israel?
That's his son, father.
Oh.
His son runs Mayanot in Israel. Father was an unbelievable person. He was like the principal. I mean, he was amongst the staff members, but he was a principal. And he passed away in 1995, suffered a lot of terrible illness, and succumbed to the illness called Tammuz, which would be this coming Monday. I'd like to share with you an interesting, kind of funny incident that happened between him and my father. Before Pesach, the rabbis often give seminars, questions and answers before the holiday. There's so many things to ask, so many questions. It's filled with a lot of mitzvahs. Thank you for that. Now I know I'm recorded, okay. So he was there, but he was invited to speak for the boys and answer questions concerning Pesach, a Pesach seminar. But not only did the entire Baal Tshuva yeshiva called Tiferes Bachurim, it was in their Beis Medrash, were they present, but also the Bachurim from upstairs, the Toim Chitmimim guys, the FFB guys, boys who were very, very, on the wild side, they also came down to listen to my father. Now, who is there present in the audience who my father never even met and was not even aware that he was in the crowd? A Reform rabbi, whom Rabbi Vichnin was Mekarev, many, many years, slowly but surely, bringing this guy closer to Yiddishkeit. He wasn't completely committed, but he was close. And this Reform rabbi was sitting in the crowd. So here comes a Tamchei Bacher, a smart aleck, and he wanted to play some fun with my father. And he asked the following question. The question he asked was, Rabbi, you're talking about selling the chametz through a rabbi to a goy. Does that rabbi have to be an Orthodox rabbi, or could be any rabbi, like even a Reform rabbi? And my father was not aware of the fact that this Reform rabbi was in the crowd. My father says, Reform rabbi? That's an oxymoron. If they're Reformed, they're not rabbis. What they are rabbonim, bad children. Rabbonim, not rabbonim, rabbonim. And you see the 6-year-old boy out the window there walking? He's much more fit to be a rabbi than any Reform rabbi is. And he went on and on and on. And then Rabbi Vichnin is not going to stop my father because he was much older than him. And he had respect. He didn't know what to do. He says, oh no, all my work is going to go in vain right now. I'm finished. I don't know what I'm going to say to him. And he was looking at the rabbi, staring at him, the Reform rabbi. Couldn't tell anything, but he was scared. My father finally finished with his diatribe, with his whole, and then finished the whole seminar. So Rabbi Vichnin walked slowly over to this Reform rabbi, scared what his reaction will be. And Reform rabbi goes, wow, that was amazing. So many questions, so many intricacies in halacha. Wow, I never even knew how complicated this Yom Tov could be. But really, what really impressed me? When the rabbi said, as it is, that a Reform rabbi are not rabbis. I was so impressed. He knew I was there, but he didn't realize my father did not know he was there. He knew I was there, and yet he had the straightforwardness not to play games and said the truth. He stands for truth. That's what I like. So I wanted to just say that Hashem guards people that are, special. My father was, I think, was very special. That even though he could have really caused some damage, Hashem made it that not only did not cause any damage, he actually brought this guy closer to Yiddishkeit. Story I wanted to share with you. Okay. Before we get to the Maamar, I want to talk a little bit for a few minutes about Beis Habechira. I know you're learning it anyways, but I want to just mention something you're probably not going to cover. What's so funny? What is so funny? Okay. So there's a Rambam that says that the Beis Hamikdash, unlike the Mishkan, was on an incline, on a hill. Lo haya b'mishor. It was not flat like the Mishkan. It was on a hill. What's the significance of the Beis Hamikdash, unlike the Mishkan, being on a hill? So the Rebbe responds and answers. I'm going to just make it short. That the major difference between the Mishkan and the Beis Hamikdash is Two things, twofold. Number one, the Mishkan was temporary, like a tent. And the Beis Hamikdash was a Bayis Olamim, called Beis Olamim. It was here for good. It was here to stay like a house, or like a tent. Chiluk number one. Chiluk number two, the second distinction is the Mishkan. So the actual makeup of the Mishkan, what was made of, the roof, animal skins, and then you had the cedar wood, the acacia wood, and then you had the earth on. But made the ground of the Mishkan, yes, they were holy. But the spot, the actual location where the Mishkan stood, was only holy while the Mishkan was there, and only because of the Mishkan, the walls and the roof, was also the earth holy at the time. But as soon as the Mishkan was transported, the Kedusha left that spot. No trace of any holiness in that makom where the Mishkan stood. Conversely, on the other hand, the Beis Hamikdash, even after it was destroyed, the actual location of where the Mikdash is remains permeated with Kedusha. Not just the actual structure, the building, but the location where it stood also has the holiness of the Mishkan, the sanctity of the Beis Hamikdash. Having said that, now we have an answer to the question why the Mikdash is on a hill and the Mishkan was flat. In the Beis Hamikdash, as you went deeper from east to west, heading towards the Holy of Holies, it became holier. First, there was restrictions. If you're Tameh, you can't walk in. Then, even if you're not Tameh, if you're not a Kohen, you can't walk in. Then only a Kohen can go, only certain times. And then Kohen can never go unless it's Yom Kippur, and only the Kohen go. So as you're entering the Beis Hamikdash, you're going up steps. But it's not just steps, begashmis. These steps that you're ascending reflect the level of ascending on a spiritual level. Now we understand why. Since we said that the actual location of the Beis Hamikdash reflected the Kedusha of the Mikdash, therefore, just like you were going higher in your Ruchnius, you also were going up steps the Gashmias, because the Gashmias was aligned with the Ruchnius. But by the Mishkan, the location of the Mishkan did not reflect the holiness of the Mishkan, so therefore it was flat. Yes, I'm going up in my Kedusha as we go deeper into the Mishkan, but as far as the Gashmiistic place that it was standing on remains flat. But the Rebbe has one problem with this answer, then one very good answer for that problem. How come there was no steps going from the second most holiest place to the first holiest place? From the Heichal to the Kodesh HaKadoshim was flat, even in the Beis Hamikdash. Sure, the Kodesh HaKadoshim was much holier than the Heichal, so there should have been more steps, and yet there were no steps, flat. And the answer is very simple. When you're going from one level to the next, and they're comparable to each other, yes, you can express that through steps. When you're going from one level to infinity, you can't express that by going up steps. It's much more than just going up steps. It's beyond any kind of physical reflection of ascending. So therefore, it remained flat, letting us know it's so far removed that we can't even describe it as an aliyah. Why was that so? Because what do we have in the Kodesh HaKadoshim? We had a phenomenon of nimna hanimnoas, not miracle. There were miracles all over the Beis Hamikdash. But what's even beyond the miracle is, well, the Aron took up space and simultaneously did not take up space. That's like a miracle. If I were to ask you the question, can Hashem make a miracle without making a miracle? That's beyond the miracle. The answer is yes, but it makes no sense. Is he making one or not? Make up your mind. Could you have a square circle? I could turn a circle into a square. Or I could take an elephant, put an elephant through the hole of a needle, and I can make a miracle, squeeze the elephant into the hole or expand the hole miraculously. But how about the elephant retains its size and the hole retains its size? The hole is like this and the elephant is big. Can the elephant go through? If the answer is yes, that's more than a miracle. That's an inherent contradiction. Make up your mind. Miracle is, wow, how did that happen? But at least you can picture it. You can't picture a square circle. You can picture a circle turning into a square miraculously, but you can't picture them. And in the Beis Hamikdash, in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, in the holiest spot, what do we have? beyond miracles. No rules. In the rest of the Beis Hamikdash, you had miracles. Okay, that's also great, but it doesn't compare to the holiness of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So therefore, there was no steps, because steps would indicate you're going, there's some kind of relationship to the previous level. But that besides the example is Rabbi Zera, when he went, although when you learn, I mentioned this many times, when you learn Torah, Chumash helps you understand Mishnah. Mishnah helps you understand Gemara. And Gemara, the Rashi helps you understand it. Every piece of information you get is helpful to the next stage. But if you're learning something that is entirely different from the previous, your previous knowledge can be a disturbance, a distraction to the new level. Yeah? He fasted.
He asked Hashem to take away.
He asked Hashem to help him, for he fasted 40 days that he should forget the Babylonian. Right, because the Babylonian Talmud is so different. It's from not the halachas, but the methodology is so different than the way when you learn Talmud Yerushalmi, that you have to forget that method to be a keli for the next world. Like it says, when the neshama goes to Gan Eden, it has to forget whatever it saw in this world, because it's a distraction. And from one Gan Eden to the next, it has to also wipe your memory away, amnesia. So likewise, going from the Heichel to the Kodesh HaKadoshim, no steps. Steps would indicate, from here you get to here. But you don't get from here to here if it's Kodesh HaKadoshim. Then the Rebbe gives another answer. That's as far as the actual space, location. What about the person in your avodah? When you're going from one level to the next level, there are stages. But when you reach the climax, you get to the highest level, you can't rise, because rising is self-expression. You can't rise. You go flat. Bittul. Bittul is flat. Like in Shemon Esrei. You get to Shemon Esrei, everything is accelerating up the ladder. Get to Shemon Esrei, you say, God, I can't even talk, open up my lips. Hashem sfasai tiftach. I can't, there's no ani, there's not here. I had that experience when going into Yechidus with the Rebbe. Before the Yechidus, working every day, getting closer in my hachanas. It was like better than Yom Kippur. A month before, I was already trying to eliminate all kinds of thoughts. Be careful what you say, be careful how you eat, be careful how you sleep. Little by little, you're growing and growing and growing. And then the moment you're waiting for the door to open, it's your turn to go in, one-on-one with the Rebbe, you're also accelerating. And then you walk in, you can't even feel nervous. You're too nervous to be nervous. You can't even feel anything. It's the experience I had. I lost track of feeling. Not because I'm on such a high madrega, it's just the experience is so phenomenal. To be one-on-one with such a holy person, I'm sure you feel the same way. Just imagine it would be with the Rambam comes into this room, Rashi comes into this room, Moshe Rabbeinu comes into this room. How are you going to feel? You're not going to feel. Stunned. That's the feeling that a Jew had, the Kohen Gadol had, when he entered the Kodesh HaKadoshim. And if he didn't have that feeling, he didn't last through the year. Didn't live through the year. That's why there were so many different Kohanim Gedolim in the second Beis Hamikdash, because they bought their way in. They knew they won't make it that year, but it was such a great taiva to have that godly experience that they knew they're not going to last. They're not going to live out the year. Yet it was worthwhile for them to buy their way in. Sorry. Sorry about that. Going somewhere? Okay, now we can start the mimer. I want to.
Do you tell?
We're going right on the mimer. We'll have some copies. What the mimer is about, again, is the emphasis on the superiority of the makabel over the mashpia. Is this? You're getting distracted? Everyone here? Hello? Anyone home?
Yeah.
Okay. No. The gist of the mimer is to try to show you that which seems to be the last and the least And the most inferior, the least energy, has the most energy. So we start off with, how does the essence of the Father how is it delivered? Not through something spiritual, through something very physical. A putrid seminal drop carries the essence of the Father's brain, and even more than that, the essence of the Father's life. As opposed to a teacher is giving over some real deep ideas, not giving over, and how do you express, and that's not going to be, he's giving over very deep ideas, but he's not giving the essence of his brain. And yet, the conveyor, the capsule that carries that which he's giving over is something spiritual. So we explained, yes, Noach Shelasim B'Seifon, the beginning, the highest always finds expression in the lowest. You want to bring an idea down to a simple person, you have to really think deep. When you know you have to explain things to a first grader, you have to make it clear, you have to really think first. To give a muscle, to give a parable, an analogy to something deep, it takes a lot more deeper thinking than it does just to speak on a regular level. When you have to find a physical analogy for something, you really have to think deeper. That's why very deep concepts can't be expressed natural flow. You need to find something. Let's forget about it. I can't explain this. Let me just give you a muscle. We gave other examples also. That when you want to squeeze something that is very self-contained, even begashmias, you have something like a fruit that has its juice very deeply contained in the fruit. You can't just, you have to squeeze as hard as possible to get the core out of its way. You can't just go through, conventional flow. You have to have a non-conventional flow, something that's out of the ordinary. So something that doesn't seem to be a vessel, a transmitter, like a putrid drop, it's dafka that really draws the depth from the person's soul. Then we went on to the woman. The woman is she receives the seminal drop from her husband. She's only the receiver. And yet it says in Chassidus that not only is she an equal partner to procreation, but the power to create yesh miyayin lies in the body of the woman, and the tipas ha'av, the seminal drop of the father, of the male, is merely that which triggers her ability to procreate. In other words, in the male sperm, there is infinite energy, which within that seminal drop, you have a child who can have another child, who will have another child, generation after generation after generation. You have infinite amount of generations that can emerge from that seminal drop. It's unlimited. But you know what? Nothing's going to happen. You have all the material you need, but you don't have the ability to make that transition from potential to action. The one that makes it, actualizes creation of a child, is the woman. So besides developing the child through the 9 months gestation, incubation, she is really the creator of the child. She has that incredible koyach. And we explained in last class that Chassidus explains that a woman's source is from the beginninglessness of God. God's being an existence that just has to be. The power that she has, which gives her the power to create something from nothing. What does something from nothing really mean? There's no reason why you're here. You're supposed to be nothing. How'd you get here? For example, this world, looking at the world out there, the world screams out, I was always around. There's no creator. Such a big lie. It's incredible. Every second is being created by God, and yet the world screams out, no, I'm on my own. I'm on my own. There is no creator. Out of nowhere, out of the blue. Hashem didn't create a world because there was a potential prior to that. He created the potential for existence too. Yeah. That being the case, it's incredible. From whence does that come from? That something emerges from nothing. The answer is God. He also came from nothing. His existence always was and always has to be. He's an existence that has no rhyme or reason why he exists. He just exists. We can't even imagine that. Go crazy, I mentioned last time. Try to imagine an absolute existence. So because God is the absolute, it's only he that can create a new existence out of the blue. He can create something that feels it has no creator because he indeed has no creator. That's the power that Hashem endowed and put into a woman's body, the power to procreate. In the sperm of the male, you have God's projective power of infinity. His power that Hashem is endless. But you know what endlessness means? Wonderful, you're endless. But endless does not seem to include the ability to make something else endless. You're endless. You're endless. And nothing else gets into my way. Nothing else exists. Beginningless means I'm not limited in being endless. I can create new beginnings. I can take something that doesn't exist and make that into something. Endless means it's just about me. So in the sperm of the male, you have Hashem's power of infinity revealed, which is why we see that a child can be born and then transmits his power, his sperm, to the next generation, and to the next generation, and to the next generation, and nothing gets weaker. It's infinite. But infinity is still not the ultimate because God can create infinity. God's existence, just being in existence, is what the woman has. And just like God's existence is quiet, endlessness makes a lot of noise. It's projective. When you spread and extend to no end, that's power. Having no beginning, no power. It's just, I exist. I am here. How I'm here, not important. I exist. So women have that power of God that he is the ultimate existence, and therefore no wonder he can start a new existence. And that's why it's passive. Women have the passive role because that level of God's existence is also passive. Doesn't need to go anywhere. We also explain, I'm going to go over one more thing. We also explain that it's true, there's what's greater, the heavenly spheres, like the Shamayim, the Shemesh, the Areach, Kochavim, sun and moon, or the stars, or the earthly creatures that are on earth. So on the one hand, we see an advantage over the sun. It doesn't get weaker. It's been the same old sun around for thousands of years. Moon, all the stars, the galaxies are all there. No change. That's Ein Sof. That's infinity. You see infinity. But what you don't see is production. The sun will not produce anything else. It will shine, but it won't produce something new. You want to have something new? You need the earth. So although people on earth don't live forever, personally, they don't live forever, but the species live forever. And there's production. You have a child, and your child has another child, and another child. That's on earth. In heaven, we don't have that. Likewise, by Malachim, it says, a Malach. Interesting, Malachim don't have reproduction. A Malach can produce. The Shamas do have that power, Lamaila, producing other sparks. Something another Indian. And this is throughout not only the first Maamar, the second Maamar, he discusses this concept of the Makabel, the receiver is superior to the giver. We have that Torah versus the Jewish people. Torah is like the sperm of the male that Hashem lets out and plants it into a Jew, who's the Makabel. And yet it says the Jew has a higher source in Hashem in godliness than the Torah. Within Torah itself, you have the male aspect of Torah, the written Torah, which is very short, like the sperm, very seminal drop. And then you have the elaboration of the oral Torah, that will be the female aspect of Torah. And there's an advantage that the Torah Sheba'al Peh has over Torah Shebeksav. This idea of creating new ideas, new concepts, you only find in the oral Torah, not in the written Torah. Written Torah might be holier, every word counts. But the power of expansion is in Torah Shabbat Pet. Now let's go back to the Maamar here. So I'm trying to cover some ground today for a change. On the page of 27, the last paragraph, you have a new meaning of the words Bina Yesera, Mitna Be'isha, Yotzim Be'ish. What does that mean? There's more level of understanding in a woman than in a man. Men are better in Das, women are better in Bina. Bina means to analyze, take things apart. That's a simple meaning. Here he has a new translation of what it means, Bina Yesera. Not the power of intellect, the power to dissect ideas, analyze ideas. The power to expand in procreation, the power to make what the husband has in potential, to expand and bring it out, make it actually happen. That's the Bina Yesera we're talking about here in Maamar. Thus, our sages say, page 27 on the bottom, an extra measure of understanding was bestowed upon women, surpassing that possessed by man. What does that mean to say? That means that the capacity to create a child through incubation of the drop in the woman's womb for 9 months, during which is developed a complete construction of 248 limbs and 365 sinews, including all the soul powers of mind and emotions, was given to the woman. Man is not endowed with this capacity. In Hebrew, which means only in the woman do we have this special energy, that through the incubation and gestation of the tipa, of the seminal drop of the male, when it's building up in the womb of the female, will there be the actual existence of the child, the creation of the child with a full structure, with binyan shalim, 248 limbs, 365 sinews, and all the spiritual energies as well, along with the physical parts of the body, which was not given to the man. There's a whole arichas in Chassidus, thank you. I don't want to get into that right now. I'm not going to get into the biology of the X's and the Y chromosomes, how a girl is formed, how a boy is formed. It's a whole long issue, and it's discussed in Chassidus as well. But so that's not the subject here. Here the subject is that although the male sperm has the potential of infinity, for it to be activated and actually happen, you need that transition from potential to action. It's the woman that does that. And he is the alerter, the arouser that triggers the woman's power. Next, page 28. Im hayois in Hebrew. The betipas hadechar, that in the seminal drop of the male. Kol koyach havlad contains the potential of the existence of the child, every single part of his body, and every koyach, every faculty that the child will have is all contained in that sperm. Ukanal, as mentioned before, mikol makoy, nonetheless, ein bazeh shum havaya chadasha. There wouldn't be any new existence just from the sperm of the male. Ki im dafke al yedei hanukva, but rather only through, this is accomplished only through the female. To the koycha dafka, it's only within her power. Nasa his habas havlad is created a new child. The b'chinas havaya chadasha mamash. Havaya here means not God, but means a being, a new being, literally. Now, of course, you're going to say, well, without the male, you can't have, the female can't accomplish anything. So he's saying that without the female, nothing happens. Likewise, vaker, the other way around too. Without the male, nothing happens. But when they're both there, who do you attribute the power of procreation to? Her. The energy is in her. That which awakens that energy, the power to energize and trigger that energy, that it should work, comes from the male. Now, Zeu Bini Yesera Be'isha, this is what we mean when we say Bini Yesera. Again, repeating what he said before. Sheyeshba toisfis koyach. This woman has an extra measure of understanding. That means not understanding in logic, but the power of Bina means the power to expand. So just like in logic, it means the power to expand an idea and create something new from a seminal drop, from Chachma. So too, the woman has that power to make a child happen, make it happen. To create a new beginning, an ability that man lacks on his own. Now we get to speech. Just like we see in procreation, the female, the receiver, has an advantage over the donor. The male that the power to procreate is in her, and the male just helps to facilitate that. The same is true with speech. The female part of every human being is the power of speech. It's the receiving end. The ultimate receiver is the ego. Let me explain why. You could ask me a question, aren't our emotions also receiving? Why do we call Dibur the woman within us? How about emotions? It sounds pretty female. And emotions also receive from intellect. When you get excited about something, after you understand the greatness, you contemplate on Hashem's greatness, let's say it's his awesomeness, that gives you fear, instills fear, an emotion of fear. If you contemplate on Hashem's loving kindness of miracles that he does, how he helps us, the Hashgacha Pratis, that stirs a feeling of love. So we see that midas are also mekabel, not just dibur, but there's a big difference. When emotions are mekabel from seichel, they're mekabels. What are they receiving? They're receiving the influence of intellect. But emotions could still be emotions without intellect. You know, sometimes you get emotional and there's no logic driving it. In fact, that's real emotions. How about animals who don't have too much seichel? Are they missing any emotions? No. Their emotions are more intense than ours. So emotions don't need seichel to be emotions. They need seichel to be logical, to be driven by logic. In other words, seichel infuses seichel in the midah, but the midah still has an independent existence. You can't say midas are nothing without seichel. No, they're not nothing. They can be more stabilized and more refined with intellect, unlike animals who are not refined. But to say that emotions need seichel for it to exist, that's wrong. On the other hand, dibur, if you don't have what to say, you're not missing in your intellect, you're missing, it's not called dibur. If you don't have what to say and you talk, you're not talking, you're mumbling. By definition, dibur has no meaning if it's not conveying something. There's no message, whether it's emotional, whether it's intellectual, it's not called dibur. So for dibur to be dibur, it needs to get to receive from its superiors, from what are called the male donors. Emotions or intellect are the male, infusing energy into your words so you can have what to say. What do we find by dibur? Let's look inside now. Now we're going to go fast. Similar to what we said about procreation, about the woman, it's true also in the woman inside of us. We find within dibur something phenomenal. That there's something added, there's some energy infused in words when you utter your words and vocalize your words, put it into dibur, that you don't have before you did that. Now he's going to explain later what that is, but before he does that, he says, he focuses on the question. For even though it shouldn't be that way, the im hayos, he's going to put down dibur right now. He's going to say how it doesn't really make sense. It seemed to be impossible to imagine that when you speak, you can gain much more than what you had before you spoke. Because every word you say, you thought about first. So all dibur has is what's being fed. It doesn't have anything more than that. How could it then have anything to surpass its superiors? How could it be that when you speak, you gain more than when you don't speak? Now, we're not talking about a person. Often it happens that when you think, tired? Oh, sleep. Okay. I don't like sleeping. That's what boys do. It often happens that when you think and you don't have it really so clear in your mind, you got to speak it out, then it becomes clear. Not discussing that. We're discussing someone who has thought everything out crystal clear, and there's nothing vague. Everything is 100% barur. And yet, the moment you start speaking, things change. That's the question. How is that possible? So let's see what he says inside. Im hayos, although the chol hagiluyim shebedibur, all the revelations, all the energy that's found within words is derived from where? Heimen haseichel umidos is derived from intellect and emotions. For speech on its own, ein bo klum, has nothing. Ki im, it only has what you put into it. It has nothing more than what you put into it. You don't put anything into it, has no value. So it has nothing more than what it receives from the higher faculties. For example, when one speaks words of wisdom, speech is then receiving from the intellect that enlightens it. Likewise, when you speak words of emotions, when one speaks words of love or anger, speech is then receiving. Who's infusing energy into the words? Your heart. So that's number one. Number two, it's not even a first-hand receiver. At least you might say, you know what? Dibur has some kind of yichus. It's the first receiver. It's not even first, doesn't even have that yichus. You know who the first receiver is? Your thoughts. Before you speak, you have to think. And thinking is only a garment. It's not your personality. So before you actually speak for the outside, you're thinking. That's your first reception. You're speaking to yourself. When you're thinking, you're actually talking to yourself. You're finding out by your thoughts, you're actually conveying to yourself how you feel. So thought is the first collector, the first recipient. And Dibur is a second-hand recipient. After the thoughts are clear, now you start speaking. So it doesn't even have the yichus of the advantage and the great schus of being number one in the receiving end. Besides being a receiver, it's a second-hand receiver. That's what he continues. The Dibur receives, it's not direct. It first has to be thought out. First, what you understood and what you felt in your heart, you first start thinking about it. Then you start thinking how to convey it, how to bring it out. And from after you've thought about it, you've talked to yourself, now the energy that you had in your thought can now go to the next stage to speech. The process of reception is at first the intellect or the emotions enlighten the language of thought, and from thought the idea enters the words of speech. Just want to mention to you, where does language begin? When you speak Spanish, for example, or Portuguese, right, or French, or Yiddish, you think in Yiddish. If that's your first language, that's how you think. So you also have a language in thought, but there's no language in love. In which language do you love someone? You can think about the love of the language, but the actual emotion of love or fear or hate or whatever is beyond any language. In which language is 2 and 2 4? No language in every language. There's no formation of letters. When do you start feeling words and letters? When you think. And even when you think, you sometimes are not even aware of the fact that you have a formation of letters and words. But language begins from machshava. So machshava is a garment expressing yourself to yourself. And then, now that I know what's going on, now I can convey it to other people as well.
Rabbi. Hello.
Yes.
Hi, Rabbi. How are you? My name is Debbie. Sorry to interrupt. I have a question.
Yes.
I'm reading the Sefer Yetzirah in the chapter 3:7. I have it in Spanish, so I'm going to translate it to you. But it says that the Aleph, do you hear me well?
Yes, go ahead.
It says that the letter Aleph was linked to the Sephira Malchut, and Malchut is the mouth. And it's through Malchut that the rest of the Sephirot can express themselves. And I'm thinking about what you're saying about the speech and how the speech comes from something else, and once you express them with your mouth, it has a complete different meaning. And it also explains
not different meaning. Okay, well, we'll see in the Maamar a little later exactly what happens. I haven't clarified it yet. Let me first go through what happens when you speak, so we'll have a better understanding, and then you could ask your question.
Okay.
But then it gets confusing when we mix other things in. Let's first see what the Maamar says. Now, he says that it's strange. Dibur is so inferior. First of all, you have to have emotions or ideas before you speak. And even in the element, in the realm of reception, it's not even the first receiver. It doesn't even have that useless. So therefore, the question is going to be, before we get to that, well, therefore, consequently, having said that, the energy that's revealed from the soul in your thoughts is much deeper, much more profound than when you actually speak. Why is that? Because thought is the first-hand receiver, direct receiver from your emotions and your intellect. And therefore, thought, since it precedes speech, in the line of reception, it has a lot more to it. Much more of the neshama of who you are is revealed in your thoughts. Now, especially if you're the first hand, then when you have second hand and third hand, like if I actually was at a shir and I heard the shir myself, then I give it over to a second person who wasn't there. My advantage over the second person is greater than the second person over the third person, because the second and third were both not there. But the first person, the first receiver, has something unique that no other receiver has. So it's interesting. You look at the words of the Maamar. He repeats himself and then changes himself. Look what he says here. First, he says, He doesn't say harbe yoser, it just says yoser. Since machshava is before dibur, therefore it has more of the neshama revealed. And then he says, after he mentions the word that the machshava is the number one mekabel, the first receiver, if you're first, not just before, but you're actually first online, then umeir b'machshava hagili harbe yoser mibedibur. Being that you're number one, you can't even compare the level of energy in the thought versus speech. Then he goes on in the next paragraph to say something very interesting. Because machshava is so attached to the person, and it's natural, the thought is one with the soul. You can't stop thinking throughout your whole life. Until it constantly is actively moving, meaning it's floating. You're always thinking, you're going from one thought to the next thought to the next thought. Yes, we get distracted. I know we have ADD, and we keep changing. Our thoughts keep changing every moment, and we can't focus too long, more than 5 seconds on a certain concept. So we think here, but we're always thinking. Thought never stops. Now he goes on and says, besides the fact that thought never stops, and as long as you're alive, you think, it has another advantage. The words of your thought don't leave you. They stay inside of you. Now, it's interesting. It's possible to have something that's united with something else and can't live without that something else, but yet it's not. It does leave the source. How about sun rays? The rays of the sun need the sun. The sun is always shining, whether you see it or not. The sun naturally gives off rays. Whether you see it is irrelevant. It might be clouds, but the sun naturally has rays. So the rays of the sun are like, in a way, thought. It's always there. But unlike thought, the rays of the sun leave the sun and travel millions of miles. But your thought doesn't travel outside of you. No one can hear your thoughts. And even more so, it doesn't leave the person who's thinking. You can compare it, perhaps, to given in Chassidus, the color of the apple. An apple is red, let's say. Can you see the red apple, the color red, without seeing the apple? Can you see the redness of the apple without looking at the apple? No. So the redness of the apple doesn't leave the apple. It stays with the apple. Rays of the sun spread, but the color of an object stays with the object. So your thought would be somewhat similar to the color of an apple, meaning it's connected. It can't leave the person, and therefore nobody knows what you're saying, what you're thinking about. But it's more than that. Look at the next words. Besides the fact that thoughts don't leave you, they're connected wherever you are, that's where they are. They don't spread to the outside. Furthermore, the ein ha'oisios murgoshin, They can't be detected. You can't sense them. Another person can't sense them. The red apple, I see the red. I can't see the red without the apple, but I could see the red. The color I can see with the apple. But thoughts of the person can't be noticed. They're not felt. Nobody can feel your thoughts. And you know what? If you're really thinking, one second, if you're really, really thinking, you don't feel your own thoughts. You start thinking about the fact you're thinking, then you've really lost track of thinking. Real thinking is you're so engrossed in thought that you've lost track of the fact that you're thinking. You don't feel your thoughts. If you feel your thoughts, you're not really thinking thoroughly. It's getting closer to speech. Real thought is called machshava sheba machshava. Thought of a thought is when you're lost in thought. So even you don't feel your own thoughts. You're feeling, but you're not feeling the words. You know what I'm saying? So let alone an outsider, forget about it. So unlike the idea of the apple, which the red color of the apple doesn't leave the apple, but you can see the red. It's noticeable, it flashes, it's beautiful, it's a nice color. But thoughts, besides the fact they can't separate from the etzem, from the person, and they're constant, they also can't even be felt. They're like submerged in a higher force. The soul, what's going on in your soul, drowns out your ability to sense your own thoughts. So there's so much more going on that you lose track of the fact you're even thinking. So besides the fact that the thoughts themselves are very refined, even that level of refinement is also missing, is also like lost because of its close proximity to the neshama, to the soul, and to the inner faculties of the person. It blinds the fact that you're even thinking, takes away the awareness of the fact you're thinking. Yeah.
Can this be brought to a deeper level in that when we were all thinking about the red apple, I was thinking about what my perception of the red apple is. Everyone else was thinking of their perception of the red apple.
Yeah.
And we would not be able to get on what that red means unless we actually communicate.
Yeah, but I'm not discussing the communication I'm discussing just the apple itself.
That's fun.
But
She has a red apple.
that's why you brought it on. It's living with the Maamar.
Living with the times.
But it doesn't mention that this is something I mentioned. Don't ever mention that the Maamar talked about an apple. I throw that in because I just gave an example of something that stays. I'm not discussing how you can convey, how you see that. People see different things. We have different eyes. We have different ways of conveying things. But forget about subjectiveness. The objective apple that exists with the color together, you can't separate the two. I mean, you could remove it. You could remove it. That part is true. But when it's there, you can't see the color of the apple without seeing the apple. It's not like rays of the sun that spread and extend. Machshava has an advantage over all of it. It's united with the source. You can't separate the two. You're always thinking, number one. Number two, it doesn't leave the person. And number three, you can't even feel it. Conversely, when it comes to speech, there's a level of separation, of detachment from the person. Not only do people not always speak, in fact, it says there's a time not to talk. Shlomo Melech says in Proverbs, Eis ledaber, ve'eis lachashot, a time to talk and a time to keep quiet. And by talking, you can ruin things. So it's helpful for the person not to talk sometimes. Not just, are you able to not talk? You're supposed to keep quiet at times. Number one. So unlike machshava, which is constant, dibur is not constant. Number two, v'heim isgalim v'yotzim chutz le'etzem. The words you utter leave you. Unlike machshava, it stays inside. Words certainly leave the person. And number three, they are very much sensed. Besides the fact that you feel the words that you're saying, you certainly hear what you're saying. Others who are outside of you can also hear what you're saying. Your words are audible now. So three things happen. It's no longer constant, number one. Number two, it leaves you. And number three, they're very much sensed. You can detect the words of your speech. And of course, the listener also detects it. On the other hand, with the letters of machshava, the words of your thought, where much more of you is revealed when you're thinking than when you're speaking. And that's the reason of all the three differences. In other words, like this, you don't have to think to think. You're always thinking. Without even thinking, you don't have to go through a tzimtzum, a contraction, to put yourself into the mode of thinking. It comes with you. It's natural. There's no pu'ula, no action that's needed for one to think. Yeah, to think about a certain idea, you have to prepare yourself. But to think is the same as the sun does not have to work on giving off its rays. The sun will lometasek l'ha'ir. The sun does not have to occupy itself and do something to give off its rays. Just by virtue of being there, it will give off rays. So too, your machshava. There's a big difference between, it's not a perfect example. There's advantages in the sun rays but I'm not getting to that right now. We're focusing on the similarity. So thought is natural. It's organic. There's no need to put yourself into a special mode. But to say words doesn't come out of you. You have to. And to say words that mean something and are audible, are coherent, you have to think before you speak. You have to put yourself in a certain frame. You can't be your natural self. If you start speaking the way you think, no one will understand you. How about speaking on the same speed of how you think? What sense would that make? What takes you a minute in your thought, take you half an hour to speak, sometimes, and writing even longer. So it requires a tzimtzum. In other words, the light of your neshama is not full blast. It has to be diminished. Otherwise, you can't talk. We mentioned once before, if you're very, very excited, you really can't. You lose your ability to express yourself. You don't find any right words to say. Why is that? Because it's not your natural self. For me to put myself into a certain frame, if I'm too excited, there's too much going on deep inside of me. I can't. I don't have the wherewithal, to put myself into a certain frame. I'm busy with myself. I can't contract. I can't, adapt to the outside. I'm too much into myself. That's the reason for all these differences. So he says like this in the Maamar, the fact that there's so much of your neshama that's revealed in thought, which is lacking in speech, this is the cause and the reason for all the above differences that we mentioned before between thought and speech. So it comes out, as explained elsewhere. So the next paragraph, he says, it comes out, the whole kabbalas hadibur, that the entire reception of any light, any energy that's in your speech is not from speech, but it is derived from elsewhere. And as I said before, when you first get to understand, convey to yourself what's going on, you first have to think before you can speak. And even machshava has an advantage over dibur. So we're way, way distant from our true self when we speak. Now he adds another point. Besides the content, you look into footnote 52, you'll see what he's going to add in the next paragraph. I.e., not only is the content of speech the product of that which is above it, but even the choice of words are produced by a higher source. Sometimes we find there's two things. There's words, then there's a choice of words. You can have synonyms. For example, when you want to say the master of the world, there's two ways to say that, Adon Olam or Melech Olam. And let's say in your mind, they mean exactly the same. Master and king, you often use both. And you don't really know the difference between the two. How come sometimes you say Adon Olam and sometimes you say Melech Olam? What causes you to choose a certain frame of letters to contain an idea? You could have said it in different words. I understand you're trying to bring out the idea of mastery, Adnut. But why sometimes you say Adon, sometimes you say Melech? So he said that also comes from Seichel, but not from Bina, that comes from Chachma. Bina gives you an idea, but the choice of exactly which letters, which words you use, comes from a subconscious part of your brain called chachma, which, by the way, is lacking in a baby. Why is it that babies understand, even before they start speaking, they understand exactly what they want, they understand. The bina is there, but they just can't put it into words. They can't put what they understand into words. It takes time. And as they grow older, they finally are able to say, say a few words, but they really can't express themselves. Explain what you mean. Tell a 2-year-old, explain what you mean. He'll repeat himself or herself. But even when they do start speaking, but before they start speaking, they forget about it. Why? The seichel is there, and I can't. So it says in Chassidus, because in order to talk, find letters to contain and to express what you really want, bina is not enough. You need chachma. And that part of the brain is not developed by a child. And it's actually taken from a pasuk. Now the pasuk says, he's going to quote it in a minute. Let's go further. Not only the general content of words are derived from elsewhere, but the formation of words of speech, what words you choose to say, the exact letters and words you choose to say to convey an idea is not from dibur, it's taken from somewhere else. It comes from chachma. As it's written, I think in Mishlei and Proverbs, mitzaref lachachma. Now the truth is, it does not say mitzaref, it says masref, which means a crucible, a refining pot. Chachma is a refining pot. What does that mean in Hebrew? Menakeh. It separates good from bad. What that means is not really clear. The Mefarshim grapple with this. So Chassidus says, take the word masref, which means a refining pot or a crucible, and change the vowels. Not masref, but mitzaref. What does mitzaref mean in Hebrew? To join, to combine. Like you'd say, could you be mitzaref me to a minyan? You count me into the minyan. Can I join your minyan of a quorum of 10 people? So mitzaref means the collection of letters that form words and a collection of words that form sentences. The choice of the actual words you use comes from chachma. Mitzaref, the power to find the exact letters you want, is not from bina, because bina will not decide which exact letters to use. That comes from chachma. If the open gilia seichel, kain hu asiru v'oisius. So behemes labashar seichel. He says, based on how an idea is revealed to you, since the formation of the words that contain the insight reflects the nature of the insight's articulation. Okay. Then in the next paragraph, which is, I'm going to skip, the next paragraph, which is in parentheses, he says that there's two things. I actually mentioned before. There's bina. Bina decides on the general idea of what you want to convey. And chachma decides two things. First of all, chachma originates an idea. And then it also finds the proper kalim, containers, vessels, i.e. letters, to express the idea. It has two functions. It throws pop-ups in your mind, and then it gives you the power to choose the exact letters and words that you're going to express an idea with. This and not that. Adon Olam. Don't say Melech Olam. Say Adon Olam. But why? I could have said Melech Olam. Your Chachma is telling you exactly how to express it. And there's no understandable reason why you choose that. And nothing to do with the heart. Nothing to do, I like this word better than that word. Or I use this word more often. No, we're talking about where you use both words equally often. And yet, for some reason that you can't figure out yourself, you choose to use this synonym, Adon. And there are many examples. Another example given in Chassidus is that we have Rashi and we have the Rosh, different Rishonim, who are saying the exact same thing. They agree with each other, but they're using different words. 3 opinions. It's not true. It's 1 opinion. They all agree. They're all saying the same thing. They all agree with each other, but yet they're not saying it in the same way. That comes from Rashi's Chachma and the Rambam's Chachma and the other person's Chachma. Bina-wise, there would be no reason why they would choose different words. Idea is an idea. Why? So the mitzaref, the power that joins these letters to contain an idea in this way and not in that way, these exact containers is derived from Chachma. So all in all, Dibur is so dependent. It is so dependent. It's not funny. It depends, every aspect of it, the general content, the choice of letters and words you use. And even if you want to call Dibur, but Dibur has the mile of being a makabel. Even in that respect, it has no yichus. It's a second-hand makabel. Machshava deserves more credit. Machshava is the first makabel. When you think, now you're talking to yourself. Now you know what you want. When I speak, I have to go through a whole tinsel. I have to think, and I have to put myself into a certain frame. So how in the world is it possible to understand why when you speak, you gain in so many different ways? He's going to explain 4 different ways. 4 different things change when you're speaking if you're thinking as you speak. You need to think as you speak. It's like the sperm entering the womb of speech. Speech is the female, and as you're using your cerebrum, you're thinking. Many people don't do that. I thought before. Now, and you start saying things, and you start saying something you didn't mean to say. It often happens. You go off on. I've seen people say, and then they say too much, or they just say something they didn't mean to say because they weren't thinking as they're talking. So you really have to. But when you're thinking and you're speaking, boy, does something happen, and we'll soon see why that is. Maybe not today. Let's skip the parentheses and go to the bottom of the page, 29. Wait. Finish the next paragraph. In Cain, the choosing of these particular words does not stem. The fact that you chose these letters and not those letters when you could have chosen the same idea and in different words, is not due to the intellect itself. Huh? Oh, that's right. Yeah. Just realized that. The page. Okay, so here you have 30. Another 30 here. Aim in ha-seichel, that does not derive from seichel itself. The choice of words that you could have used, the choice of words, seichel doesn't tell you to say Adon Olam, not Melech Olam. What tells you? Something above seichel. Ki'im min koyed ha-mitzaref, it's the power of the permutation that joins and collects. Shehu ha-mitzaref u'mechaber es ha'oisius, it joins and configures and combines the letters and dresses the idea into those letters. Sometimes, for some odd reason, subconsciously, it causes you to join these words, and sometimes it's other words. That energy that does all that chooses these words, and Chachma has 2 functions. A, from Chachma is derived the articulation of an insight, meaning it leads to Bina, and it also has a second function. In what way, in what style, what exact way you will express your idea. And which determines the formation of the words that will contain the insight. So he's going to, in the next part of the Maamar, is going to start summarizing. Having said all that, we're stuck with a major question. How is it possible that when we speak, we start gaining so much? And he gives examples. In Seichel, he says there are 4 things that change. I mentioned 3 of them many times, previous classes, but the 4th one is interesting. The first 3 are, wow, it's not just this idea that I understand. With this, I can write a book. This helps me understand something else. I always had a question. Now that I have an answer to this question, another question gets answered. And now, wait a second, now we can explain this. Based on this concept, we can now delve deeper into a certain subject and find answers for so many questions. That's called expansion. Then there is depth. Then there is elucidation. What does depth mean? More abstract. Let me give you an example of just one thought. We'll stop with this. You ever hear of the word, it's good to learn for ulterior motives, because eventually you'll learn for the right purpose. Learn even for the wrong reasons. Let's say you want to learn so you can get some honor. You want people to honor you. You want to be get a good name, people looking up to you. Hey, this is a smart girl, smart boy. Gain respect. That's not for the right reason. That's the wrong reason. That's for ulterior motives. But the Gemara says, you know what? If you can't learn for the right reason, learn for the wrong reason. And it continues. Why? Tov Shel, because through learning for the wrong reason, eventually you'll learn for the right reason. Mitoch, through. Then comes Chassidus. It says, wait a second, these exact words, let's go deeper. Why is it that we're so sure that eventually you'll learn for the right reason? If you learn for the wrong reason, why should we be so sure that you're going to eventually learn for the right reason? You know why? Shemitoch, inside the Jew who's learning for the wrong reason, lies a soul that really wants to learn for the right reason. Mitoch, in the Shalal Shema, not mitoch, through. Inside, toch means inside. What's inside the person while you're doing things for the wrong reason is really a pure motive. And that pure motive will surface. Because it's even there right now. Even when you're learning for the wrong reason, deep down, you're learning for the right reason. You think that's the ultimate depth? Huh?
How does that answer the question?
Because even when you're learning for the wrong reason.
No, the question of how do you reflect?
No, I'm not giving you an answer. I'm just giving you an example of what depth means. I'm not giving the answer. Now, how about going deeper? What did I just say? That while you're learning for the wrong reason, there's a part of you that's sincere, that's holy, and wants to learn for the right reason. You might not feel that part of you, but it's there. Deep down in your subconscious, you're really learning for the right reason. Says Chassidus, let's go deeper. But the wrong reason is wrong, right? The wrong reason is bad. You're good, but the actual motive is selfish. No. Not only is the person deep down pure, even the ulterior motive. What's the ulterior motive? I want to be respected. Or if I learn, I might get a good job as a good teacher, and I want that job. I want the money, I want the respect, Sounds pretty selfish, right? You know what? You know what the real reason why you want to be respected? Because you want to make a Kiddush Hashem. Because if you're respected, you see, Torah people are special. Or why do I want to have a good life? I want to learn Torah because I know God will reward me and give me a good life. So it's self-serving. But in that self-serving ulterior motive, the soul behind that, what's really driving you to have that motive is something very holy. I want to gain wealth through my being observant, because if I gain wealth, it'll be a Kiddush Hashem. People will say, oh, if you learn Torah, it helps you with Gashmias too. It'll make Hashem's name very holy, which is the reason why Hashem tells Avram Avinu, don't worry, Avram, I'll give you a lot of schar. Avram Avinu needs to know he'll get rewarded. Avram serves Hashem with no motives, no ulterior motives. Why did Hashem say to Avram Avinu, you'll get rewarded? The answer is Avram wanted to make a Kiddush Hashem. He wants the reward not for himself. He wants the reward for himself so that others will look up to him and look up to Hashem. It'll be a Kiddush Hashem. So not just are you holy, the ulterior motive is also holy. Like the Baal Shem Tov says, when a person is hungry for food, in that hunger lies the hunger of the neshama to want to purify and elevate that food. You're not hungry for the food, you're hungry for the spark, but you're not on that level to feel it. The panemius of your physical hunger is hunger for godliness, hunger to elevate that spark. I once told this, I thought I mentioned this, when I was in Panama, on Shlichus, I told this to a young fellow, to a non-religious boy, by broken Spanish. Somehow he understood what I was saying. And he went, wow. And when he heard this, he put on film, he decided to buy a pair of film. That the panemius, your neshama, is screaming, you can't hear it, because you're not letting it express itself. You know, if you don't allow your neshama to express itself, you'll hear what your body says. But deep down, even the hunger, which is purely physical, not holy, the neshama of that hunger is the soul of that hunger is the soul, says. I'm also mentioned a different sikha, when we cry out to Hashem, we want to have a good year, we want to live long, you know, on Rosh Hashana, give us a year of life. So it sounds like we're self-serving, you know. The panemius of the reason why you want to live, because Hashem needs a dina b'tachtainim. You can't have a dina b'tachtainim without Jews being healthy. You need a healthy Jew to serve Hashem. So I want to be healthy so I can serve God. So God can have a dina b'tachtainim. Are you thinking that way? No, but the pneumius, that thought is also holy. So here we have on 3 levels. So a child, you say, learn Shel Rosh because eventually you'll learn for the right reason. If you're more advanced in your way of thinking, you can tell the child, you know why we expect you to learn for the right reason eventually? Because even right now, there's a part of you that really is good and holy. You're neshama. So here, my neshama is holy, but my motive is not, right? No. Even your motive, your ulterior motive, even that's also an expression of something holy. You just don't relate to it. So here you have 3 different levels of how to understand Tov Shel Rosh. Number 1, through Shel Rosh, or inside the person who's learning for the wrong reason is a pure reason, is a genuine reason, or inside the motive, not inside you, inside the thought that's selfish is really something very powerful and holy. Just doesn't come through you clearly. So I'm just giving you examples of taking one thought, not expanding, just learning it in a more sophisticated way, less. And the opposite also happens when you speak. We also find that suddenly, hey, I can explain this. I can explain this to a child. It's so clear in my mind that I can bring it down to a first grader. And the 4th thing is, I'll mention the 4th thing. We'll stop here. It ever happens that you look at something, and in your thought, you're convinced. I mean, both of them learn Rashi, and then there's Tosfos. And you say, well, Rashi makes more sense. I don't understand Tosfos. Then as you speak, talk over, wait a second. On the other hand, I think Tosfos makes more sense. Suddenly, it's not deeper, it's just different. You change your views as you speak. Suddenly your mind sees things it didn't see the first time. And then guess what happens later? Wait a second. I can see both points now. And wait a second, they're not arguing. They're not arguing. They're complementing each other. They're both saying the same thing. So that happens when you speak. All that can happen when you speak, as opposed to before. Even though you were thinking very deeply and you were really contemplating, meditating for a long time, and you had everything clear, you were limited. You didn't feel that you could explain this to a child. You didn't feel you had that ultimate depth, and you didn't feel the expansion, how broad the subject can be. Suddenly, as you talk, you think as you're speaking, boom. A new horizon opens up from nowhere. This can't be me. Who's doing this to me? I know who I am. I can't think this deep. I can't explain things so clearly. Why is this happening? So that's the question that the mind is going to be asking, and we will give an answer later on. Exactly. I'll give back the copies.
I was having a whole conversation about that last point with my mother last week,
Yeah.
because especially in this type
No,
of
this is not mine.
world, what?
Oh, this is
Yeah.
Yeah. Any copies? Want to have copies? Give back. Thank you.
I was having a whole conversation about that part.